Remember the movie John Q? A hospital, a father, in his desperate fight to save his son's life? Well, meet George Pickering, a father trying to cope with a similar heart-wrenching situation. Except this isn't Hollywood. This is Tomball, Texas. George is in the ICU. Outside, the cops are trying to take him down. Inside, his son lays in an ICU bed unconscious. The doctors say he's brain dead, and they're ready to pull the plug. But George isn't convinced, so he does the unthinkable. He walks into the ICU with a firearm, determined to stop any decision to end his son's life. How does a disagreement about an end-of-life decision spiral into a standoff that will shake a community? This is the story of a father willing to risk it all to save his son. On January 6th, a 27-year-old George Pickering III, I'll refer to him as Junior, was rushed to the ICU at the Tomball Regional Medical Center after suffering a massive stroke earlier in the day. The doctors declared him brain dead, notifying the family that there was no chance of recovery. For his mother and brother, who the hospital had appointed as his medical proxy, the decision was agonizing but seemed clear. Begin the process to remove life support. And since Junior was an organ donor, the hospital took the next steps in contacting an organ donor organization to arrange organ procurement. Mother and brother believed that this decision aligned best with what Junior would have wanted. But George Pickering Sr., the dad, he felt that they were moving just too fast. You see, Junior had a past medical history of seizures and these really long periods of unconsciousness, but he had always recovered in the past. Senior was convinced that his son was still alive and he just needed a few more hours in order to prove it. So he refused to accept the doctor's diagnosis and disagreed with the family's decision to move Junior from life support. When Senior arrives at the hospital, he's emotionally distraught. Plus, he's been drinking, so the combination of the two soon become volatile. George walks into the ICU, he pulls out a firearm and he waves it at the staff, threatening anyone who tries to remove his son from life support. For hours, the hospital would go on lockdown. Law enforcement surrounding the building, evacuating staff and patients near the ICU. Negotiators tried to de-escalate the situation, pleading with Senior to surrender. But this wasn't about backing down. This wasn't about grief, the fear of being harmed, or even going to jail. This was about saving his son's life. During the standoff, Senior's other son, who was present in the room at the time, was able to wrestle the gun away from him. But before police had a chance to act, Senior warned he had a backup firearm, just escalating the situation to a whole nother level. Hours into the standoff, something extraordinary happened. Senior, sitting bedside with his son, holding his hand, felt a faint squeeze. At first, he thought it was part of his imagination, but then it happened again. This was the proof that he needed. His son was alive. Convinced with his son's recovery, Senior surrendered to law enforcement, putting a peaceful end to the standoff. Despite Junior's recovery, Senior would be arrested and later charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to 1 year in jail. However, because of time spent while waiting on his trial, he only spent an additional 5 months in jail after his sentencing. Junior and Senior later filed a medical negligence lawsuit against the Tomball Regional Medical Center, alleging that doctors prematurely labeled Junior as brain dead and pressured the family into withdrawing him from life support. However, the hospital would argue that all protocols were followed correctly and that Senior's actions were independent of any medical decisions. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. This case highlights the emotionally charged nature of end-of-life decisions, the need for clear communications, and the importance of an ethics committee to help navigate conflicts. But what do you think? Leave me a message in the comments section below.